Many of us are familiar with the Buddha who relinquished worldly attachments to create a path that promised peace of mind despite harsh realities that may surround us. But are we acquainted with revolutionary Buddha, who is lost in history because he set out to challenge concepts that most people take for granted, that some are naturally predisposed to lead while others must follow? One who renounced his own leadership and sacrificed his family life to avert war between two states? Do we recognize the Buddha who confronted the entrenched notion of inherent inequality among human beings, still prevalent today even in the most advanced societies? 2.5 millennia since Buddha's birth, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's new vehicle, known as Navayana, reinterpreted the Pali Canon, presenting a fresh perspective on Buddha to humanity. This Buddha that you're about to encounter is one who proclaimed the equal entitlement of all individuals to life's bounties and equal potential of every one for accomplishment and the achievement of universal happiness. The voice of the Enlightened One emerged in the 6th century BC amidst a clash between hierarchical monarchies and more egalitarian societies in the Indian subcontinent. At that time, Buddha was leading a state called Sakya. He upheld egalitarian principles in a world where power dynamics were rapidly shifting. Buddha inherited an egalitarian perspectivum dating back to around 10,000 BC, marking early human societies. As a prince, he rejected the dominance of the warrior, merchant, and intellectual classes over society. He opposed social divisions that began around 5000 BC with temple towns as power centers, which consolidated by 2000 BC. By this time, the egalitarian ethos of the Indus Valley civilization was waning. As monarchical kingdoms proliferated from 2000 BC onward, those pockets of the subcontinent, which still managed to retain its egalitarian structure, created a strong dissenting voice, advocating for trust and solidarity in a society rife with change and upheaval. Join us as we delve into the intriguing journey of Buddha, of the new vehicle, whose teachings about the Four Noble Truths continue to inspire across generations. Siddhartha was born in the Sakya clan that were more egalitarian, although with rotational leadership between elites. What was remarkable is that, even as a child, Siddhartha could not accept the rotational leadership model. While resting and reflecting in his father's farm, he would see laborers toiling in the fields and ask, how can it be right that the laborers should toil and the master should live on the fruits of their labor? Similarly, when invited to hunting trips, he would say, I do not like to see the killing of innocent animals. These reflections were not well received by his family, who reminded him of his warrior class duties. To his stepmother, he responded, Mother, if all kshatriyas, warriors, loved one another, would they not be able to still protect their kingdoms without resorting to killing one another? Siddhartha's teachings to his friends included meditating on thoughts like, may I be happy, may my relatives be happy, may all living beings be happy. In his youth, Siddhartha married Yashodhara, and they had a son, Rahula. His father wanted him to live a typical ruling class lifestyle, indulging in wealth and lust. Despite this, Siddhartha resisted, saying, compliance with the wishes of these women pleases me not if truthfulness is not there. If there is no union of soul and nature, then out upon it, say I. At 20, Siddhartha was initiated into the Sangha, where he was a devoted member. At 28, a dispute over water resources between the Sakya kingdom and the neighboring Koliyas led to a clash. Siddhartha opposed war, saying, war does not solve any question. It only sows the seeds for another war. I feel that the Sakyas should not hasten to declare war. Siddhartha continued to oppose, saying, the Sakyas and Koliyas are close relatives. It is unnecessary for them to destroy each other. The chief argued that fighting is a soldier's duty. Siddhartha responded, Dharma, in my understanding, is recognizing that enmity does not disappear by enmity. It can be conquered by love only. Despite Siddhartha's pleas, the Sangha threatened him and his family with social boycott, demanding they give up their land. Desperate, Siddhartha said, Please do not punish my family by making them destitute. They are innocent. I am guilty. Send me to exile instead. Siddhartha then suggested he become a recluse, parivrajaka, and leave the country. Announcing this to his mother, she cried, We were talking about the evils of war, but I never thought you would go to such lengths. Siddhartha replied, I too did not think it would come to this. I hoped to win over the Sangha with a peaceful solution. He asked his wife, Yashodhara, What do you think of my decision to become parivrajaka? Expecting her to collapse, he was surprised when she said, What else could I have done in your position? You have decided rightly. You have my consent and support. I would have done the same if I were you. I cannot join you only because of Rahula. Do not worry, I will look after him. Touched by her words, Siddhartha felt fortunate to have her as his wife. He asked her to bring Rahula, cast a fatherly look upon him, and left. When Siddhartha was away, there were considerable demonstrations with people carrying flags. Koliyas are our brothers. It is wrong for brothers to fight against brothers. So it was proposed that Siddhartha's proposal was carried out and both sides could come to an amicable agreement. This news was brought to Siddhartha. Siddhartha reflected on whether to go back home. Though he very much wanted to, he realized that I left home because of this war. More fundamentally, the problem of war was conflict. Conflict is going on not only between nations, but between nobles and Brahmins, between households, between parent and child, between sister and brother, companion and companion, between classes. The conflict between nations is occasional, but these others are perpetual. Even though I left because of war, the problem has become wider. I have to find a solution for this conflict. Thus began Siddhartha's journey to find answers to the solution out of conflict and a way to the happiness of mankind. During his exile, Siddhartha couldn't ignore the turmoil and anguish in the world. He saw how conflicts, both national and familial, obstructed unity and well-being. He deeply contemplated the pervasive existential suffering, how people bury their dissatisfaction but still grapple with the gap between reality and their aspirations. This insight reflects the first noble truth: unless we collectively acknowledge this inherent suffering, we cannot transform our circumstances and forge a brighter path for everyone. In the process of discovering the second noble truth, Siddhartha focused on the roots of human suffering. He started with the observation that much of this suffering is not natural but socially induced by dominant groups forming the intellectual elite. He encountered two dominant philosophical traditions, who identified that the problem of suffering is the ego. The first type of response was from shamans. They advocated to withdraw into some kind of universal subjectivity, away from the particular attachments of the worldly life. Instead of changing society, they said one must physically or psychologically withdraw from society and pursue the path of mental purity and detachment from worldly desires. They advocated a spiritual hierarchy between body and mind. The second problematic tradition stemmed from the Brahmins. They appropriated shamanic but turned it the other way around. They said that instead of withdrawing from the world, one must live in it. But to combat the ego, one should accept one's limitations and conform to the social roles assigned and not challenge the objective social reality. They said that social hierarchy is the eternal truth, they are the guardians of this order, and by conforming to their dogmas, individuals can suppress their egos and combat suffering. Both shamanic and Brahminical traditions accepted that the nature of the self is an individual tied to its ego, prone to maintaining its temporary existence, vulnerable to domination and submission. They don't want to question how the identification of the self towards the ego happens in the first place. Buddha realized that as a group this can expose their role to themselves and others with undesired psychological and material consequences. But Buddha did not want to accept their dogma and went on to understand how this so-called identification takes place. He realized that when people are limited by their roles and withdraw from collectively changing reality, they resign to think of themselves as isolated individuals estranged from the outside world. The Buddha said, "When we think of living beings, we begin with delineation and discrimination. We separate friends from enemies, we separate animals we rear from humans, we love friends and domestic animals, we hate enemies and wild animals. In the process of maintaining their ego, individuals inevitably get into a cycle of domination and submission with other individuals. They end up maintaining hierarchy and get into conflict with those above them, below them, and equal to them. In Gaya, Buddha gave his famous fire sermon, "All things, O bhikkhus, are on fire. And what, O priests, are all these things on fire?" He goes on to mention how the senses, thoughts, etc. are on fire. And with what are they on fire? With the fire of passions, say I, with the fire of greed, lobha, with the fire of anger, dosa, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of infatuation, with the fire of delusion, avidya, excited by greed, lobha, brothers, furious with anger, dosa, blinded by delusion, moha, with mind overwhelmed, with mind enslaved. Men reflect upon their own misfortune, men reflect upon the fortunes and misfortunes of others, men experience mental suffering and anguish. Buddha said that identifying with an egoistic self hampers our ability to change social realities, leading us to submit to leaders or dominate others, causing infighting and preventing us from realizing our true intersubjective nature and transforming reality. This entanglement in hierarchical thinking perpetuates suffering, as outlined in the second noble truth. This led Buddha to the third noble truth, the middle way, which avoids extremes of domination and submission to end suffering. He emphasized developing a non-egotistic self, anatta, and embracing intersubjective transformation, anicca. By recognizing and internalizing others' experiences, we can transcend our egos and foster dynamic relationships and universal fraternity. Adopting the middle way allows us to reconfigure the self to embrace and appreciate others, transforming both in the process. These friendly, might try, interactions generate joy and enable us to connect with diverse individuals freely, without demanding conformity. A healthy mind balances subjective, emotional, and objective, rational, perceptions. Mutual recognition involves acknowledging others' subjectivity and capacity for change, blending subjective and objective awareness, and fostering interdependence. This transforms us by incorporating others into our self-perceptions, inspiring mutual accommodation. When people work together intersubjectively, they can harmoniously change objective reality without leading or being led. They can reject societies based on hierarchical leadership and build truly democratic governance. Buddha's value system, based on anatta and anicca, emphasizes compassion, karuna, as central to this relational selfhood. This approach nurtures human relationships and achieves universal fraternity, requiring a genuine effort against feelings of personal and social separateness and a lifelong commitment to the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings. A healthy sense of self will be acknowledged that there is self and other but will not exclude the other. The following texts from Buddhist literature illustrate these ideas. One day, King Parsanadi of Kosala asked Queen Molika, "Who do you love the most in this world?" "Your Highness, the person that I love the most is myself." "Your Highness. Because I love myself, I love you." You are the person who has brought the happiness to this self. On the next day, King Parsanadi made a visit to the Buddha at Jetavana Monastery and described the conversation between him and Queen Molika. The Buddha confirmed her answer through the following verse: "Our awareness travels all directions, could not find one dearer than oneself, searching all directions, still could not find one dearer than oneself, so, one as one loves oneself, one should not hurt other." According to Buddha, the basis of karuna is that of compassionate care for one's self and those of others. He said, "Like a caring mother holding and guardian the life of her only child, so with a boundless heart of loving kindness, hold yourself and all beings as your beloved children." Maitri extends beyond immediate social circles to encompass the welfare of strangers and people in distant lands, with a commitment to creating a better future for all. This, according to Buddha, is the middle way and constitutes the third noble truth. The Buddha said, "May all beings be happy and secure, may they be happy-minded. Whatever living beings there are, feeble or strong, long, stout or medium, short, small or large, seen or unseen, those dwelling far or near, those who are born, may all beings, without exception, be happy-minded. Let none deceive another nor despise any person whatever in any place. In anger or ill will let them not wish any suffering to each other. Just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, even so, let him cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let his thoughts of boundless loving kindness pervade the whole world, above, below and across, without obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity." Metta Sutta, KHP 8-9. According to the fourth noble truth, the middle way is applied through the Eightfold Path, consisting of 3 phases. The first phase involves initiating actions from an intersubjective perspective based on mutual recognition. The second phase requires cooperative actions in the objective world, emphasizing ethical speech, action, and livelihood. The third phase focuses on reflecting on the effects of our actions on both objective reality and subjective awareness. The Eightfold Path offers a practical approach to righteousness in family, work, and community, bridging subjectivity and objectivity. It promotes mutual recognition and disrupts the cycle of force and rationalization highlighted in the second noble truth. Through the Eightfold Path, we can alleviate socially induced suffering and create a society based on righteousness, liberty, equality, and fraternity. As Buddha said, Nibbana, which is the path of righteousness, is naught but the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path influences 3 areas: individuals, relationships, and institutions. It begins with Buddha, focusing on self-love, avoiding extremes, and shining despite societal constraints, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, awaken to your true nature. It then moves to Dhamma, emphasizing interdependence, cooperative work, and mutual care in families, educational institutions, workplaces, friendship and local communities. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, transform your relationships based on equality. Finally, Sangha aims to transform institutions to foster equality and positive mindsets. Sangham Saranam Gacchami, transform governance of institutions based on fraternity. Buddha believed in humanity's capacity to spread happiness widely, akin to nirvana, through collective transformation for the benefit of all beings. Buddha's teachings offer a timeless path to happiness and equality, challenging hierarchies and promoting the equal potential of all. After discovering and spreading the Eightfold Path and the 3 jewels, Buddha returned back to his family. His wife took on the responsibility of raising his son and dedicated his life to Dhamma, leaving us with his final words: "Be a light unto yourself." Buddha's teachings guide personal and societal transformation, emphasizing self-love, mutual care, and equality. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's reinterpretation of the Pali Canon revitalizes these principles, urging collective transformation towards a compassionate, harmonious society. On the last night of his life, Ambedkar ate a small amount of rice, chanted Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, and worked on the introduction of his book Buddha and His Dhamma before sleeping. Ambedkar lives on, having given us the gift of the new vehicle of Buddha's teachings, inspiring us to strive for a just and compassionate world.